We walked into the boardroom and there were 8 men sitting there. They looked us up and down, and then 4 of the 8 just jumped on their phones and started looking at emails.
Wow.
And I knew straight away we were not going to secure that deal because it was 2 women versus 8 men. And it was that moment that we thought, wow, we probably just needed to have a token male with us.
Today I have Kate Atkinson, VP Global APAC Sales for Hyatt Hotels, and really excited to get into the conversation with you.
Hi.
So what I love to start with is actually, who is Kate behind the job title, and where did you start your career? Take us on a journey.
Sure. So, gosh, I feel like I've always had this aspiration of working in hotels, even from a little child. I remember I lived in the country and coming to Melbourne and walked in, and believe it or not, it was the Grand Hyatt. And I turned to my parents and said, one day I would love to work here. And it's so funny that that was actually my first job at Hyatt, which was at the Grand Hyatt. But after school, I studied hospitality, hotel management, and then headed overseas. It was, I'm not going to say my age, but it was when Japanese tourism was huge. So I decided in my gap year at university, I'm going to head to Japan, and I worked in hotels over there.
Okay.
I learnt the language and then came back, finished my course and straight into a hotel job, which was working in, I think like many people starting out in hospitality, in F&B, so banqueting, restaurants, and then slowly worked my way around the hotel. I moved into front office, reservations, and then into sales, which is where I think I found where I loved being, dealing with customers, selling the dream, converting business. So it was really in sales that I found my groove. Although in saying that, I moved outside of hotels for a little while. I had an amazing opportunity working for a family that really looked after all the theatres in Melbourne. So I moved into, a sales role, selling events, dinner theatre packages into the 4 theatres that you see in Melbourne, which again was fortuitous because they ended up developing a hotel. So I moved back into hotels. So it was always hospitality. I found my groove in sales, and that's where I knew I wanted to stay. And while I've been with Hyatt for now 23 years, I've worked with other chains before that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I wonder, when you're talking about your career, was there a moment in time where you felt like, I'm really good at sales, I love this? Do you remember a moment where you felt that?
I actually worked as a general manager for a while, and I think I'm definitely more engaged with, and that was a lot of managing people, which I still love, mind you, but I really wanted to deal with the customer. And I think, being able to build relationships, build trust with customers to bring business your way is essential. I would say for me, when I was a general manager, I also had a hat on as sales and marketing, and I really felt that that's where my strength was, really to drive business into hotels, build relationships, take market share, and create some strategies to really drive total revenue growth. So that probably happened to me when I was at Hotel Lindrum, which unfortunately is no longer in Melbourne. It is closed down, but it was our first. It was a beautiful 70-room hotel boutique. And I think, as I mentioned, I love that sort of standalone, unique personality a hotel can have. And that was one that really, the sales part of it was what really decided. I love hotels, but sales for me, I'm going to move out of the operation and back into a pure sales and marketing role. And that's where I moved to Grand Hyatt Melbourne in a director of sales and marketing role. And that was 23 years ago.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. So over the last 23 years.
Yes.
How do you feel sales has shifted? And in particular, have you seen more women in sales now than there was before? And how do you feel that the industry, I guess we're talking about hotels and hospitality, has catered for that to enable more women to step up?
So there's a lot there, but I will start with how has it changed. And gosh, 23 years ago, I remember having a function diary and a grey lead, and I was writing in events and rubbing them out when they cancelled. And now, so technology has certainly supported sales and how we fill our hotels, whether it's rooms or events, and maximize revenue. So the whole revenue management piece is big now. It's not just filling a room, it's filling it with the right price from the right customer at the highest profitable way you can. So technology plays a big part in that. And I've worked in Australia, in the US, on property in regional roles over those 23 years and travelled a lot. I think in terms of women, I think women have always, in hospitality, had a strong presence in sales and marketing. But in terms of leadership, if I look at leadership when I started 23 years ago at Hyatt, they were all men. So now we actually look at what our leadership looks like. And as a company, Hyatt are very focused on diversity and really elevating women in leadership roles. And I think what we've been able to do is create flexibility in roles to really enable women to continue to grow and thrive within the industry and be able to be a working mum and, you know, manage a bit of work from home if you need to, which we do in our roles. The travelling, the entertainment at night. I mean, we're all about entertaining and speaking to customers, and that is bringing them into hotels, you know, of an evening, of a weekend, or travelling. So I think it's what we've been able to do is create a working environment where women can have the flexibility, if they are looking after family, to be able to manage their role and continue to grow and thrive. And we continue to do that. It's always an ongoing challenge, but hotels, as you know, are a 24/7 operation. So there's no Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, unfortunately.
Yeah, definitely. So there's a fact that 1 in 10 sales leaders are women. Why do you feel that is?
So if I look at, if it's 1 in 10, I think women are very honest about their ability. And when going for roles, I think they're probably the first to say, oh, I don't have this skill, but I'm really good at this. I feel sometimes men just have the confidence to say, I can do this and have the experience. So I think we're way too honest with what our experience is and what we need to continue to further develop on. So potentially that's sometimes why men just are way more confident going into interviews, into jobs, things like that. I also think, as I mentioned before, working mothers, working wives, like, there's still that role to play where, you know, I've got children still at school. I'm trying to manage parent-teacher interviews and dealing with, you know, a child who's going through exams and how I need to be there for her in the morning so I won't be able to travel and do a sales trip or a trade show. So I think there is a certain period of time where women have to look at prioritising what that looks like. And so I feel it's still a problem. And it's really about how do we continue to support women grow by being able to manage both. But I think that first piece is crucial in terms of we're too honest with what we still don't know, and maybe that comes across in how we interview. So
yeah, definitely. She's not the first time that that's come up. Just the confidence to be able to step forward and say, you know, I might only have 70% of the skill set, but I'll learn the rest.
Yes.
And I'll just make it happen, and just throwing your hat in the ring. And I think that happens quite often. So with regards to your personal career, and have you ever had a situation where you felt the lack of confidence, or a situation where as a female you felt like you didn't have the same opportunities as your male counterparts had? Is there any time that you can think of?
I have a perfect time where I feel being a woman was at a disadvantage. And we're Hyatt are a management company. So we don't technically own all of our hotels. We only own a few. So we are constantly also, my role in selling hotels, I also sell Hyatt as a potential management company for an owner. Mm-hmm. And we were, myself and our head of development actually for Hyatt in Australia, she's also a female, we headed over to Fiji, and there was an existing hotel that they were potentially looking at changing the management of the hotel. Mm-hmm. So we were going in along with another competitor to meet with the owners of this hotel. And I remember my counterpart in development and it was hot. We were both wearing beautiful summer dresses because it was hot. We weren't wearing a suit, which in hindsight we probably should have. I remember we waited until the previous the competitor walked out, and it was 8 men in suits. So my counterpart, she and I, we both walked in, and we walked into the boardroom, and there were 8 men sitting there. And I remember the moment I walked in, they looked around behind us to see if there was anyone else. And they looked us up and down, and then 4 of the 8 just jumped on their phones and started looking at emails. Wow. And I knew straight away we were not going to secure that deal because it was 2 women, and given the audience, it was the fact that we probably had not the ability to run their hotel, that it was only 2 females versus 8 men. Mm-hmm. And we probably could have prepared ourselves better, I think, going into that room. Whatever we said, the ability we had, the capabilities, of Hyatt entering the Fijian market, I think was falling on deaf ears. So, yeah. And it was that moment that we thought, wow, we probably just needed to have a token male with us just to grab their attention. So, yeah.
There's been many situations that I've experienced the conversation around, should we just have a male in the room just to secure the deal?
Yes.
And isn't it ridiculous that we need to think that way? I haven't experienced many times where it's the other way around, but there was one occasion that we were pitching to a global car brand, and the particular car launch was catered towards the female audience, specifically mothers, what I would call yummy mummies, the exclusive sort of Bondi yoga mum. And the 4, I guess, senior leadership from our team were men, and they went in and presented. And my question was, so we didn't put any women into the panel to go in and pitch. And that was the feedback from that company to say, we're actually talking about launching this to a female market, and you did not bring one female to the pitch, and that's your downfall. So I think people do make that judgment. Yeah. They do look at you in first impressions, and it's like people make a first impression of you within like 7 seconds. Yes. I think it's even quicker these days.
It was, as I said, I walked straight into that room and literally
the energy
shifted.
Yeah.
Look up and down. Yeah.
How do you deal with a situation like that when you know that you're about to talk to these 8 men for about another hour, and you know that they've just disengaged, like they're looking at their phone?
Well, we really had to think on the spot. I remember I looked at my counterpart straight away, and we really did try and come up with the support of a diverse workforce back in Australia that would support their hotel. We have men and women on the leadership teams that are there to work with, the operations. So what we try to do is really, over 60% of our workforce are male anyway within our industry. So we really started to focus on that. So it wasn't necessarily we're here to sell the dream, but the team running the operation are very diverse. And that's our focus. Diversity is key for us. So, we did try and highlight that as part of the pitch, that it's a strong team, and that, look, let's face it, often decision makers of holidays are the women. So, it's not the male that decides on the family holiday to Fiji. So we really tried to go in with what edge we would do differently and how we would target the customer to stay in the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, we were not successful in securing that deal, but I think we knew that straight away when we walked in. Yeah.
In, I guess, situations where we're looking at the women who are up and coming and they would look to your job title, perhaps they would look you up on LinkedIn and go, wow, I'd love to have a role like that one day. What would you be advising someone who's starting out in their career and really wants to get to a role like yours? What are the things that you would suggest to them to really think about, to harness, even if it's personality attributes?
Mm-hmm. I'd say a couple of things. If I looked at my younger self, if I was starting out again, and what I would do or do differently, or what I would recommend. And I think it's really about trying to keep an open mind and take risks and do things that typically aren't in your job scope or outside of what you're supposed to be doing. I travelled within my role before I settled down. I wanted to explore different countries, work in different countries, experience different things. And really it's about then understanding cultures and people. With my role now, I oversee China, India, Korea, Japan, Singapore, Hong Kong. And with that, I manage teams in those regions. So, it's really understanding personalities and how to work within industries and how to work with different teams. And I think that's key. If you do have the opportunity to travel within this role or within a role, take it on and harness it and learn and experience. I also think working within different areas, one of the first things when I started at Grand Hyatt Melbourne, we had a general manager who's like, Kate, I'm going to send you to housekeeping for 3 months. And I thought, what? I want to work in housekeeping? This is not what I signed up for. But it was actually the best experience because I really understood the operation then. And, what we sell, the hotel has to deliver. So I can sell, a 200-person group turning over within a day and filling an event space, but is housekeeping going to be able to manage that and cope with doing that? Yeah. So for me, really experience different facets of the hotel because what we sell needs to be able to be operationally possible. And so work within different, as I said, work in front office, work in sales, work in rooms. But then within sales, there are different segments within sales as well. There are teams that focus on meetings and events. So do some meeting event experience, then move into the transient sales or marketing.
Yeah.
And marketing, everyone thinks, oh, it's so cool, marketing, PR. But gosh, I remember doing time in marketing and PR and it's a lot of hard work and it's long hours. And you're being pulled in many different directions by many different departments. And then there's that revenue management piece, which for me, if you said, what's the one thing you could continue to further develop on, it's revenue management. It's really understanding data and analysing data and being able to price accordingly, which, we know is a big part of how do you really maximise profit. So I would say travel if you can, work outside of your department or to understand the full picture and take risks, and for me even how I got into this role, which I am now overseeing more of an Asia Pacific area, is that after COVID, obviously hospitality was one of the hardest hit and hotels especially. So as a company, we had to downsize and roles were absorbed or let go. And my role at the time, I was just overseeing the hotels here in Australia and New Zealand, but we had to let go of this position that I'm in now. And I was a little frustrated because I could see that customers needed a structure or needed people to contact to book internationally. So I actually took on this role more volunteering outside of my current role. And I said to Hyatt management at the time, I said, we need someone in this role. We don't have headcount. I said, well, I'm happy to pick it up in my current scope and do what I can. And so to be honest, this role was offered to me because I'd sort of been doing some of it anyway over the past few years. And I think it was like, well, gosh, she can do it. And by the way, head office for Hyatt is in for Asia Pacific's in Hong Kong. And I can't move from Melbourne. I've got children here. I've got a husband that works here. So I did it on a volunteer basis based from Melbourne. And I think they realised you don't need to be in a headquarters to be able to do a role. You know, if there's flexibility, if there's scope, it can be done from anywhere. So I think that's how I was successful in moving into where I am now. Yeah.
And also, if you're the right person for the job, it doesn't matter where you are these days.
Yeah.
So, and I totally agree with you in terms of anyone, male or female, that is looking to step up or elevate themselves in a career and they have a pathway. If they're ambitious and they know where they want to be, I always recommend trial and error and testing out different parts of businesses and functions. And even if you don't know where you want to be in your career, the best thing you can do is almost experiment and try being a barista for a week, or, you know, try and go and do housekeeping. But you do get to learn all facets of that. If you're going to go for that management job, you can say, I've actually worked in several parts of the business and I know how they all work together. So it's not necessarily experience that you're going to get from like education or university. Like hands-on, getting into the hustle is always, I recommend it all the time.
And I can actually, I'm pretty good at making a bed as a result of that.
So you mentioned working within APAC and various different countries that you visit and you work with. How do you feel like Australia sits in terms of its empowering women, and how does that compare to other countries? Because I guess from my personal experience, having visited, you know, the Philippines and India and China, there's different levels of how women are treated just in general population. And I can only imagine how that impacts them within a corporate setting. So yeah, tell me what notes do you have in terms of comparing that?
Yeah, I think within sales, and if I look at sales structures within Hyatt, within our competitors as well, women do tend to still or have a presence in a leadership capacity in most of those countries. Probably less so in Korea and Japan. They're probably the two. I would say male dominance is more in the leadership roles. Most of the customers we deal with, we tend to deal with males as well. So, you know, for me, when I'm visiting those countries, meeting some of our customers, I always have our team to support, introduce. It all has to come down with language as well. So, you know, there's some of the challenges. I think China is making real inroads, and I look at some of the key customers that we work with out of those at the China market, whether it's Alibaba or Beijing ByteDance, which is TikTok, which is huge. There are women leading that space when it comes to travel and hospitality. So I feel like China is continuing to really develop in that space. Of course, Singapore, Hong Kong, I feel are very similar to Australia. And then in India, wow, it was my first time to India last year, which is a treat. And it was, I still feel in sales, very heavily dominated male. In fact, most of the customer events we went to, the trade shows we attended, it was predominantly male. So, but we have a female leader there. So hopefully that will continue to buck the trend a little bit. But I think in hospitality and in sales, female leaders are growing, and so the support is there, the respect is there. It really just comes down to building relationships with the key players that you need to.
That's what we were talking about before, was eye contact in meetings when you're meeting certain, I guess, C-suites, and they always maintain more eye contact with the male counterpart. And there was a situation where you had a junior person in the room.
Yes, that was me. It was my sales manager.
They assumed that you were his, I guess, not his boss in the situation.
Yeah, that was a few years ago. So it was a client, and my sales manager, which was a male, client was a male, wanted me to come with him to meet this client, see how we could develop business. It was an IT company, but this person was the head of travel. And I literally sat in that meeting, the eye contact, I tried to get eye contact. He constantly looked at the sales manager. And it was only at the end of the meeting where my sales manager said, well, it was so great to meet you and to meet my boss. And I think the shock on this person's face when they realised I was actually the boss, but I think he thought I was the junior there to take notes, or I have no idea. And in a way apologised to me. And it was funny because I think he apologised because he showed literally did not make eye contact once through the meeting, even though I was asking questions. So, it was interesting. In fact, even the sales manager afterwards said to me afterwards, I noticed they didn't really show you any respect or any contact at all. So
it's that really leans into that unconscious bias, right?
Sure does.
If you were not introduced at the beginning and you just sat down and there's a male and a female, just the behavior that's happening, I would love to do a science experiment around that and just see the reception of it. Because I still have a lot of conversations today where there's a lot more noise and positivity and I guess movement around this gender gap. But just because we're having the conversation doesn't mean we've made headway.
No.
And it's really interesting to me how many people say, well, we're doing great at it. And I very much hear that from more so males than I do women. And just yesterday I was at a networking event, and as women, we're still feeling like it's still a very male-dominated environment where we're going up and presenting to boards, and I call them Daves, probably, 10 Daves sitting around the table and one female, and they feel that is a fair representation, which is, it's still that feeling that there's progress, but not really.
Yeah, I mean, we as a company, we're really trying to grow leadership general managers with, female general managers. We certainly have a big skew towards male, and we have over 1,350 hotels now. To be honest, I don't know the exact count of female general managers, but is heavily skewed towards males. So we are really trying to continue to develop female leaders into general manager roles. But the problem we have is we then have to present candidates to an owner of a hotel. So every time that there's a vacancy within a hotel of a general manager posting, we always have to present a couple of candidates to an owner. So the frustration we have is that we always try and offer diversity within the candidate profile, but it's the owner that's usually choosing the male. So unfortunately, while we as a company continue to try and put forward and develop women in general manager roles, sometimes it's not supported by an owner.
I wonder what they're picking the candidates based on. If you were to strip away the name and the photo of the person and all they had was their skills, wonder what they would pick.
I wonder.
And I wonder why we're not doing that. Just pick based on, I guess in hospitality you do have a certain perception of how you dress and making the right impression and looking the part, especially if you're in a 5-star hotel.
Exactly.
But there's got to be companies out there that remove the name and the photograph, and you just have to pick.
Yeah.
Like just even having an ethnic name, I feel that people make a preconceived idea. Oh, they might have an accent maybe, or they'll look a certain way, or I could tell that they're a woman.
Yeah.
I'd love to be able to see what that would look like. Another experiment that we should do for sure. Great. So I think one of the things that we spoke about before was around the sales and marketing. And actually, before I go there, we talked about, is it Women in Hyatt? Is that an initiative?
Women at Hyatt,
yes. So tell me a bit more about that.
So Women at Hyatt is one of our diversity groups within the company. We have quite a few. And it's really about creating a network or a group there where women can, or men, and we're open to men being part of the Women at Hyatt group as well. And in fact, we even have quite a few members that are male, which I think is fabulous. And it's creating an opportunity for women to be able to learn and grow within Hyatt and feel safe and feel they can network, build some mentors within this network, but really learn how they can thrive. As I said, we have many groups, but that's sort of one of our diversity groups that I'm really passionate about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you have men in that group.
Yes, we do.
Because we need to have advocates in that space where they're also championing the conversation.
Absolutely.
It's not one-sided at all. Yeah, so that's really wonderful.
Yeah.
So sales,
Yes.
head of sales, and therefore I see that you've worked in marketing as well. Tell me about the dynamic in which sales and marketing work together, because I'm having a ton of conversations at the moment, large global enterprise companies. And what I'm finding is there's a massive misalignment, I would say, but also working in silos doesn't help that. And actually getting both teams to work together. Tell me a little bit about what you've experienced, I guess, over the last few years around having perhaps a misaligned team and what it actually means to have great alignment.
So it's always, there's always going to be separate teams and separate budgets. So they always have their own goals. But I think what's important is to have really one overarching leader, commercial services leader that looks at what are our goals as a company for this year for our hotels and what do we need to achieve. So having that North Star. So whether it's the marketing team and the sales team, whatever they do is leading towards that strategy, that goal or that outcome. If I look more locally, and I'm going to reference something we did last year, during COVID, I was so focused on sleep, and I think everybody had the opportunity to sleep more or sleep less because of all the things that were taking place. So I became a bit fascinated with sleep, and then I thought, hang on, I work in hotels, so why do people stay in hotels? They stay in hotels to sleep. So what we did was we did a Sleep at Hyatt program, and that was to create an offering that would enhance travellers to stay in a Hyatt because they can get a better night's sleep. And so we worked with marketing. So our goal was to grow revenue in our hotels, especially with the corporate travellers. The international travellers were starting to return because flights were coming in, borders were open. And we aligned with the sales team and the marketing team to come together with a Sleep at Hyatt offering that we could put out in market that would drive room nights into our hotels, but would also become a bit of a talking point or a marketing point to say, oh, if you stay at Hyatt, you'll always get a great night's sleep. So we worked with a sleep expert. We engaged with a sleep expert. We engaged with twins, Zach and Jordan Stenmark, who created these Dreamers sleepwear glasses that shut out the blue, and so you only had red light coming in. But it really, what it does with all this, all the artificial lights, it cuts those out and really starts to onset the melatonin production as you're going. So put these glasses on half an hour before you go to bed. We also created these sleep tips that we put bedside. So 10 just quick tips to help you get a better night's sleep. We put together this beautiful Iku sleep pack, which had salts and temple roll-on. It had an eye mask, it had sleepy time tea. And we then created a Sleep at Hyatt package, which our sales teams went out to sell to corporates, to our leisure partners, to our agency partners. We put it online. We put a fair bit behind digital marketing as well, PR. And we went out to a lot of our corporate travel managers and said, we'd love to a value add, or if you pay a modifier on top of your rate, you can get all these inclusions, which would enhance your travellers to get a better night's sleep. And it was really successful. It was one aligned goal, which was to drive room nights into our hotels. We put together a tactical offer, so it was a code we could track, and then everything built into that. So extremely well, in fact, so much so that our American hotels have literally stolen the idea and they are rolling it out in 2025.
Amazing.
So yeah, it was a great result. And we were all aligned. The goal was to drive room nights, and we tracked it obviously through a special offer code.
Yeah, that's really amazing. I love the fact that you're able to combine both the sales and marketing together. And I keep talking about this one revenue team.
Yes.
Right. We all have to work together to have that singular target of driving more sales. Have you found that working alongside marketing and especially in the B2B space, a lot of our audience are in B2B, right? And I feel like B2B marketing is challenging. And have you found that there's been any, I guess, key challenges that you've had to overcome in that space?
Yeah, there has. A key challenge is when you are looking at sort of how, from a sales perspective, how am I going to fill our hotels?
Yeah.
If I look at last year, it was a great example where across Asia Pacific, groups, meetings and events was off the boil a little. I think what happened was there was a big resurgence and rebound of people coming together and having conferences, product launches, meetings in 2023 and in 2024, especially in Australia, especially in China. It dropped significantly. And so we really identified that meetings, events and groups was something that we really needed to push in our hotels. So we looked at conversion times. What are our salespeople doing? Are they doing sales calls? Are we being proactive enough? Are we being aggressive enough? And yet marketing were doing their own thing. They were doing an influencer campaign to drive holiday stays into a certain market. And then they were doing everything else around food and beverage marketing. How do we fill our restaurants? And so they were spending all this money, yet our core problem, if you look at the area that our hotels are really struggling, was groups, meetings and events. So sales are doing their thing, marketing were doing their thing, and we failed dismally. We didn't fill our hotels with meetings and events. So this year we literally came together, and I think it's the first time we've done it where we've sat down and said, okay, at the end of the day, this is what we struggled in last year. We need marketing to support what we're doing there. So we're doing some alignment when it comes to filling our hotels with groups, meetings and events, marketing us, supporting us with some allocation of their money to put behind B2B marketing to really do that. So, it was definite, but it all comes from the top. It's the leadership at the top that brings them together to identify what are our priorities for the year and how are we going to do that, and bringing in marketing and bringing in sales to solve that rather than having two key leads that do their own thing. So,
This is, I guess, a cross-industry problem. It has to come from the top. I think there needs to be more recognition from CEOs or COOs to actually talk about getting the sales and marketing team in the same room.
Yes.
I cannot tell you how many times I've suggested to either the sales or marketing divisions, say, let's get everyone into the room, and people's faces are literally like, are you kidding me? Why are we not doing this? We all have the same goals, and yet, there's just such a lack of information and a lack of sharing information. And I've always wondered why that is. Do you have any insight to why we think that is, other than having separate budgets and separate goals?
Yeah, I think it all comes down. If I look within our industry, and if I look at sales goals and I look at marketing goals, if you look at KPIs, they're quite different. Obviously, sales is obvious. It's revenue and it's driving revenue into our hotels. Marketing could be how many social media followings they improve within the hotel. I've got this many more Facebook followers and this many more Instagram followers, and I generated this much PR. But it's not necessarily revenue driven. So it's just that's their goal. It could be driving F&B. I need to have more covers in the restaurant, but they're not aligned with what the sales goals are. So they just need to have some alignment on what overall goals are, and marketing should have revenue attached, personally, I think.
I think so.
To what their goals and KPIs are.
Yeah.
So as long as there's a component of that, that's important, and that's where they will align. But if they're completely separate KPIs and goals, then they'll follow their own paths and they'll be...
It's so interesting because I think that marketing do spend a large chunk of their time building brand, and then building brand is also being on socials and active, which is fairly what I would classify as vanity metrics, which is great because you do want to be the most trending hotel brand out there that creates that lifestyle, that feeling, that emotion. However, how to drive that towards marketing other than just doing a promo is so difficult. Have you seen any successful ways in which, I guess, where you're building a brand but also driving sales has happened?
So, yes, I do. We have, as a company, we now have 33 brands within our company.
Wow.
And often our expansion has been through acquisition of companies. So we acquired a few years ago a company called Two Roads Hospitality. Within that, a number of different brands. And one of them was this brand called Alila. And I don't know if you've heard Alila before, but it was its own standalone brand, beautiful hotels, especially in Bali. And I think the struggle for us is, how do we add another brand to Hyatt? We already have a lot. How do we differentiate it? How do we work with this brand to make sure it keeps its own unique identity and its following, and it doesn't get confused with the other brands we have, like Andaz or, Hyatt Regency or Grand Hyatt in Bali. So we did do a campaign specifically around Alila, and it was our own unique brand, but it was important that it followed up with sales strategies to support it as well. So Alila is a very sustainable product. It is a very well-being product, which is certainly important. So the way when we launched this brand, especially under the Hyatt portfolio in this market here, we engaged some yoga instructors, influencers. We even worked with a specialist well-being consultant and sustainable consultant, and we did our own journey around a fully sustainable model. So one of our hotels, Alila Uluwatu, 95% of plastics. It's plastic free, 95%. So everything.
Oh, wow.
Even to a point where suppliers will deliver, they have to take the plastic away with them. They deliver it, unpack it, and take the plastic away. And we were thinking, wow, that's great from a marketing perspective, but how do we turn that into sales? So we worked with a lot of our luxury agency partners to really drive this sustainable product and sustainable brand within their customer base. And so it was great how the marketing team worked on some great video content and some great imagery and influencers. And then the sales team went out with some sales, with marketing collateral to really push to a certain type of customer that was what they wanted to experience. They loved the sustainable piece. It was a well-being journey for them, an experience, opposed to just a hotel stay. So, but it was tough because, again, we had to look at, what does this brand represent? How do we differentiate it? And really go on to do some focused sales efforts to a certain customer, but that's what they'd like. Yeah,
absolutely. I think what we're talking about, when we talk about differentiation, marketing calls it unique selling point, but the key word in there is selling. So why are we not talking to the sales department to say, we think this is unique from a marketing point of view, but are you actually going to be able to leverage that and sell it as part of what you guys are doing?
Yeah.
And actually having that thread all the way through, rather than marketing coming up with an amazing idea, have no idea if it's actually going to contribute to revenue and sales and help the sales team actually use that in conversation.
Yeah. And I think, I'll jump in quickly. I think what's important, every time we do an offer now, whether it's a meetings and events offer, whether it's a tactical offer, we always speak to our customers first. And the last thing, the current offer we're about to launch now, which is an Asia Pacific meetings and events offer, the sales leads got our customers in a room and went through, what do you want to see from booking your next meeting event? What will convert? What will be a deciding factor for you to choose Hyatt? What are the key metrics you'd like to see? So every time marketing we'll come up with this offer and we want to actually market it on these channels, we actually go back and say, let's speak to our customers that are going to be booking it first, decide what does the offer look like and how would they see it being marketed to them. So,
That's so interesting, because one of the things that I'm advocating for within businesses is that using the sales calls and adding in questions within the sales calls and recording them to enable insights that we can provide to marketing. So, for example, when you speak to, say, a customer, when you're picking your hotel, why do you pick Hyatt over the other options that you have available to you? And if you ask that question 50 times, 100 times, you're going to find a pattern.
Yes.
There's going to be something that is going to come out as 70% of people said this. So why are we not using sales calls and discussions as our market research, as the feedback loop? that actually helps marketing market better. And therefore, it's sort of like this, rather than having a funnel where we have top, middle, and bottom, the funnel almost used to be like an infinity loop of sales and marketing working together like that. And I'd love to be able to change that funnel at some point, and actively doing it right now. But it takes a shift for people to go from the old way of doing sales and marketing to the new way. Have you seen any new ways recently, other than, I guess, it being driven by people? We talked about driving, I guess, the one revenue team needs to come from the top. Any thoughts around that?
So we have forums where we invite some of our top customers. We take them away somewhere.
Nice.
We make them very relaxed. It's usually somewhere fun, like a resort. And we always invite our marketing teams and our operational teams to join us. So the sales leads usually organise it, but we always invite someone from marketing and someone from the operation, a general manager, senior operations leader, to be there, because we want customers to hear from them. Firstly, if I'm the general manager for a hotel and I want to roll out this and this is what the customer wants, and the general manager says, absolutely, I hear you. Operationally, these are our challenges. So it's great, but also from a marketing standpoint as well. So we always try and look at collaboration when we have these forums too, when we're bringing customers together, and we bring them from India, from China, from Japan, all over, because they all have different needs, not a one size fits all. So having our marketing team there and operations team there, they then hear how it differentiates from these different countries, what's important. And then hopefully when we're looking at coming up with, a campaign or an offer, everyone's voice has been heard, but we've also heard from, as I said, in China this might work, but in Japan it doesn't. So, I found that the well-being piece, Australians love it. If Singapore, Japan, very hard. China, even a little hard. Right. So, it's really interesting to think, let's focus on well-being and let's come up with an offer. But when some markets are just think, it's not going to work, then it's about how you slice and dice that message. Yeah.
It's that localization and really understanding your audiences in those locations.
Yes.
But what I love about this is that it sounds like sales drove the market research.
Yes. Well, coordinated the forums together to be able to do that.
Yeah. But it was like that qualitative, focus group, really getting in there and understanding the customer. That was very much driven by the sales team and invited the marketing along. Super interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
How are you seeing in your role at the moment that AI is shifting the way in which some of the sales roles are working and even marketing? Are you seeing that it is slowly creeping in more and more? And where is it actually, I guess, enabling roles to be more efficient? But are you seeing that any roles could become redundant in the future?
Well, I hope in our field roles aren't becoming redundant, but I do feel that AI can support and enhance. So if I actually start with sales, we're looking at AI to help. One of the biggest challenges we have is responding to leads and responding to inquiries, and in a timely manner. If I speak to many of our meeting planners or event organisers, they usually say, our customers need it now. So it's usually the first two that we look at. So we need to be in those first two proposals that go back to them. So we're looking at AI to enhance the turnaround times on some of the proposals we send. Availability, yes. Pricing, yes. Some basic information to then, after that first response goes back, we can follow up with more detailed. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't stop that human connection that we have with the customer, and I think that's what in sales is never going to go away. It's about the interaction we have with the customer. Our customers like to deal with people that they trust, that they have a relationship with, and so AI won't be able to replace that. So from a sales perspective, I think AI is important to support the sales to be able to go out and sell proposals, the data that's needed to support us. From a marketing perspective, we use a little bit of AI at the moment in terms of helping create content, write press releases. I think AI will play more of a role in marketing.
Yeah. Around the content.
Yes, content creation. I mean,
Yeah.
I use AI now to help me draft responses, to help put together press releases.
Yes.
It just makes my time more efficient.
Yeah.
Put together PowerPoint presentations.
Yeah.
And I think, well, both for sales and for marketing. So I think that's where AI will help. But again, I think we're still just scratching the surface of the opportunities there.
Yeah. I think in any case with sales and marketing, like you can definitely use AI as creating a resource bank. So if you have any questions about how would I handle a customer's request, and then you can use the AI to, provide a response. And that could be a gathering of all the responses that you've done over the last 6 months, and you get the best of the best there. So it's a great way to have that resource library. I have really thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
I would love for people to be able to find you after the show. Where can they connect with you and find you?
So on LinkedIn, Kate Atkinson, and would love to support, answer any questions. Anyone interested in joining the hospitality and sales within hospitality, I'm happy to have that conversation.
Yeah, it's definitely an exciting space to be in, and the fact that you get to visit many countries, I think that'd be on a lot of people's sort of idea of an ideal job, is to be able to work and travel.
Yes.
So again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Really
It was
appreciate
wonderful
it.
to be here. Thank you.